today we're going to start with making meaning. One of the ways that we can work to really change the relationship with our security guard, with our limbic system, is we can actually begin to find meaning for pain that we're going through. So, and I'm talking, sometimes we have to discover meaning or make meaning or invent purpose. So for example, last week we talked about post-traumatic stress disorder and how that's developed and how it can literally start creating a lot of anxiety and pain in the brain. If somebody does not have some sort of meaning attached to pain they've experienced, if they don't have some sort of understanding or a purpose for why they're going through a hard time, that actually compounds the pain that they're experiencing, and often we'll call that suffering. So it's captured in this little phrase here. This is Eric Grecians, and he was a Navy SEAL, and he writes books about how to kind of return back to normal. And one of those, he says, one of the reasons you're suffering right now is precisely because the purpose of your struggle is unclear. Now, what he's not saying is that if you can figure out why you're having pain, then your pain will go away. That's not it. He's talking about suffering. He's talking about we're going to have pain, but we don't have to compound that pain by not understanding why the pain is there. So finding meaning, discovering meaning, even inventing it, that's good, that's healthy. And those who are able to come back from something like PTSD all have this in common. They've all found some sort of meaning or given some sort of purpose for the pain and the difficulties they've gone through. So one of the reasons this is so important is if we're going through something painful, and so in here, this is the insula in your brain, one of the places in your brain that registers pain, your security guard is watching that very closely and is going to try and respond to that pain. And it will call up your lizard brain to get you activated into a state of freeze or fight or flight. That's great. Again, if the pain is immediate and you're trying to deal with immediate physical safety, this is exactly what you should be doing. But what we're talking about is when the pain isn't something that's going to go away anytime soon, and it's not immediately life-threatening. And again, we've talked about this before, in the brain, there's no difference between emotional pain and physical pain. If your insula lights up, you're in pain. It's the same thing, and your security guard's going to try and deal with that unless you do. So it's very important that you get your conscious self activated, your frontal lobes, because what we need is the frontal lobes to begin to develop an understanding of this flashing pain in the brain. We need to come up with a reason why it is there, a useful reason, invent some sort of meaning to it. If we don't, it's guaranteed that the security guard will, and it will take over, and it will do everything it can to get us to deal with that pain. It's going to cause us to freeze up, go into depression, right? To just kind of try and remove ourselves from life. Or it's going to put us into a fight or flight state, that anxiety, that angst, that anger. Again, these are really useful for immediate physical threat, not so helpful when the pain that we're dealing with is not something that's going to immediately harm us. So this is one strategy of doing that. And I mentioned Eric Grecians, this is one of his books, Resilience. He writes a bunch of letters to a fellow military person who's come home and is struggling, and he's starting to teach him how to make meaning of the tremendous difficulties he had faced in war. And we can do a very similar thing. Another Navy SEAL, they seem to write a lot of books. I think that's one of the things they're taught in their training is, okay, as soon as you're done being a Navy SEAL, you need to go home and write a book. And I'm kind of glad they do. They write some really good stuff. One of them here, David Goggins, he writes some amazing information. He writes some amazing information about his own life. He came from a very difficult background, abusive childhood, a lot of racism that he experienced. And it really wrecked him for the first part of his life until he found a way to make meaning out of it. And he goes through that discovery process in this book, and he talks about how he turned this pain and these difficult circumstances from his childhood into motivation. This isn't the strategy for everybody, and it's a very good strategy for some people. So if you like that, if you like the idea of engaging your painful history as a source of strength and motivation, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins is a great resource. I do want to give a warning. I, I think that Navy SEALs are a true fitting of Swears Like a Sailor. There's a lot of language in his book, and there's also graphic descriptions of child abuse. So please, if those are triggering to you, just be aware that those are both part of the content of this book. Probably one of the most well-respected books that really tries to address this in a deep way is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And in there you learn how he, as a prisoner, was being beaten and would have died, except that he invented purpose. He found a reason. He actually imagined himself, as he's being beaten nearly to death, he imagined himself recovering from that and one day speaking to a group of people about resilience and meaning. So he actually invented purpose in the middle of his painful experiences where many others died. So he gives some great methods. Someone who definitely understands the depths of pain. He lost many family members to the concentration camps, and he barely survived himself. So he is someone who's speaking from a place of knowing about the importance of finding or making meaning from the difficulties and the painful experiences that we have. So this is one strategy. And so like with all the other strategies, if you like this strategy, sometimes it's helpful to turn it into a statement, an if-then statement. So if I am feeling pain in my ankle, then I will remember that my Boy Scouts had a meaningful day. So this is obviously mine. Wouldn't make sense to you, but a couple of years ago, I took my Boy Scouts and we went snowboarding, and I happened to break my ankle. Well, that caused me a lot of pain for several months. I was in a cast, and then it took me well over a year to finally get to where I could run and be active again. And that involved a lot of pain that I could have been really depressed about, although I tried to frequently remember, okay, yes, I got this injury, but it was in the service of these boys, and they built some really good memories that day. So while I suffered, I'm glad I did, because I know that those memories the boys had in that experience, they won't forget. And so it gave meaning to my pain. It didn't take the pain away, it still hurt, but it at least gave meaning. So you find your pain, and your pain, we're not comparing pain here. Your pain may come from other types of trauma, maybe abuse in some way, an assault of some sort, maybe from a vehicle accident, whatever it happens to be, a loss. Put that pain there, find meaning in that pain. And again, this is one strategy, so please stick around. If this strategy is not for you, well, let's look at some others.